elected by the Parliament of the Republic of Fiji.
Secretary General.
Consideration of bills.
I now call upon the Honourable Attorney General to move his motion. You have the floor, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, sir. Mr. Speaker, sir, pursuant to Resolution Parliament Wednesday, 9 December 2020, I now move the Environment Management Amendment Bill 2020 be debated and voted upon and be passed. Thank you, sir.
Is there a seconder?
Mr. Speaker, sir, I beg to second the motion.
Honourable members, the debate is limited to 1 hour pursuant to the resolution of Parliament. I now call on the Honourable Attorney General to speak on his motion. You have the floor, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, sir. Mr. Speaker, sir, as discussed on Wednesday, this bill essentially seeks to put into effect the ban on the polystyrene products, which comes into effect from 1 January 2021, in a slightly different fashion to what we had originally envisaged when we announced this ban last year. Last year in the budget, 1920 budget, we had announced that polystyrene will be banned from Fiji from 1 Jan. Of course, we all know the deleterious effect of polystyrene. We've already banned single-use plastic bags. We will be hopefully in February bringing some more matters to Parliament in respect of plastic bags. We are seeing that there is some lacuna in the law too, where some people are abusing the process. We're still working on that because there is, some usage of plastics in a particular area, in the same way with polystyrene. Because, for example, polystyrene has a very harmful effect, and the chemical leakage from that must be controlled. Given COVID-19, Mr. Speaker, sir, we have, as proposed in the bill, that from 1 Jan, all raw materials that is used to make polystyrene will be banned. Any restaurant, etc., that has polystyrene, cups, containers, plates, etc., and packaging trays, will be able to use it till 31 July of next year. Any manufacturer that's bringing in the raw materials will be able to finish all their stock to make the polystyrene products till 31 July of next year. We've had numerous submissions. We've been having a lot of consultations. Just to inform Parliament, Mr. Speaker, sir, we actually have a polystyrene ban committee, which has established to guide awareness initiatives, legislative formulation, and implementation of the polystyrene ban. The PBC, as we call it, is co-chaired by the Permanent Secretary of Economy and the Permanent Secretary of Environment, and consists of relevant government ministries and agencies such as FRCS, Ministry of Commerce and Trade, Ministry of Communications, Office of Solicitor General, and various other stakeholders that are brought in or co-opted. After numerous in-person consultations with local manufacturers and distributors of polystyrene products by the Ministry from 2nd to 21st of September this year, we also received written submissions early on when the COVID came around. The PBC determined that local industries will be able to comply with the polystyrene ban if the ban is brought along about a specific timeline. The in-person consultation, local manufacturing distributed polystyrene products were conducted by the Ministry of Economy from 2nd to 21 September again, and they were able to come up with the recommendations. So essentially, Mr. Speaker, sir, the bill seeks to amend the Environment Management Act, which comes under the purview of the Minister for Environment, to prohibit manufacture, sale, supply and distribution of polystyrene products from 1 August 2021, allowing for a 7-month grace period. This 7-month grace period is provided after consultations with the various stakeholders, as highlighted earlier on, so they can utilize the remaining stock. And of course, it takes into account the adverse impact on the economy. The EMA bill, Mr. Speaker, sir, will be complemented by regulations amending the Customs Prohibited Imports and Exports Regulation, which is made by through the Ministry of Economy. The Customs Import Regulations seek to prohibit the importation of polystyrene from 1 January 2021, which is in a few weeks' time. Mr. Speaker, sir, the bill also empowers the Minister for Waterways and Environment to make regulations to exempt certain polystyrene products from polystyrene ban. The regulations set out the following exemptions. So, for example, polystyrene products or materials are used solely for cushioning, packed products such as electrical appliances. Polystyrene products are used in building materials provided they are neatly kept and properly disposed of. Polystyrene materials are used as cooler boxes, polystyrene sponges and foam mattresses, and all materials that are prescribed based on standard trade measures or pre-packed with components of polystyrene that are not assembled locally. As we know that most of the polystyrene that actually ends up in our waterways are in fact the ones that people generally use on a day-to-day basis. You know, the restaurants, they give you the polystyrene containers and people throw that away willy-nilly. You can go along the foreshore area here in front of His Excellency's residence along to Suva Point. You'll see people eating lunches and throwing the polystyrene, containers out, and the cups, etc. Cups that McDonald's uses or other places, they do use that. Interestingly enough, I went to, had a takeaway too yesterday, which was a very sort of runny stir fry. There's a lot of liquid in it from Yum Yum's restaurant on Princess Road. The entire thing was given to me in a paper glazed container. So some people are already complying with it. It's actually paper with a bit of glaze on it, and it does not leak at all. That's what we want. That paper actually can be actually, it decomposes eventually. Unlike polystyrene, nor is there any chemical leakage from it. So we look forward to everybody's support in this. We also would like to say to all the manufacturers that we've given a 7-month leeway, and we hope everybody will comply with it. Also lifts up our credentials, and of course, creates a much better environment for us and also our biodiversity. Thank you, sir.
I thank the Honourable Attorney General. Honourable members, the floor is now open for debate on this motion. I call upon the Honourable Attorney General to add anything further.
I have no further comments. Thank you, sir.
Honourable members, Parliament will now vote. The question is that pursuant to resolution of Parliament on Wednesday, 9 December 2020, that the Environment Management Amendment Bill 2020 be debated, voted upon and be passed. Does any member oppose the motion? As no member opposes, the motion is agreed to unanimously. Secretary General.
Bill for an Act to amend the Environment Management Act 2005, Bill number 42 of 2020, enacted by the Parliament of the Republic of Fiji.
Secretary General.
Consideration of bills.
I now call upon the Honourable Attorney General to move his motion. You have the floor, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, sir. Mr. Speaker, sir, pursuant to a resolution of Parliament on Wednesday, 9th December, I now move that the COVID-19 Response Home Loan Assistance Bill 2020 be debated, voted upon and be passed. Thank you, sir.
Is there a seconder?
Mr. Speaker, sir, I beg to second the motion.
Honourable members, the debate is limited to 1 hour pursuant to the resolution of Parliament. I now call upon the Honourable Attorney General to speak on his motion. You have the floor, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, sir. Again, Mr. Speaker, sir, we have touched upon some of the issues pertaining to the bill, but as highlighted in the introduction of the bill on Wednesday, this bill essentially gives comfort and relief, Mr. Speaker, sir, and more so the psychological relief to those people who already have their accounts under distress. There are a number of people whose home loan repayments they are unable to meet, and they have had arrangements with the financial institutions, and banks have actually given them some form of relief where they do not pay the principal, only pay interest, and in some extreme cases they've given a holiday on both the types of payments. We had been able to achieve this arrangement with the banks without any legal enforcement of it, but simply by persuasion. And I think the banks, not to give them too much credit, the banks also realize that these people won't be able to do the repayments, and that they are their customers, and they have to actually, make sure that they tag along with them and assist them. Because of course, in this point in time, it would be completely I think, quite debilitating for the economy and also for the personal security of many individuals if people start getting their homes being mortgage sale. Of course, there are some people with deep pockets. They may go along and buy the homes, the mortgage sale homes. It'd be good for them. I was told a story that after the events of 1987, there's one gentleman, because a lot of people fled in, fear, insecurity, he went around and purchased 50 homes in 1 week because he was getting bargain sale prices. People whose homes were at that time valued at $150,000 were selling it at $30,000, $40,000. We don't want a similar situation. So, Mr. Speaker, sir, we've got an arrangement with the banks. The bill is essentially, Mr. Speaker, sir, it does two things. It gives the psychological security to those people whose accounts are under these arrangements, that these arrangements will continue, and as you can see in the bill, it continues till the March of next year. Secondly, the bill gives the ability to these members, which currently they don't have the ability, to access the FNPF accounts to do their home mortgage repayments. Because many of these account holders, Mr. Speaker, sir, when they actually bought their place of residence, they withdrew the FNPF accounts, which is allowed up to 50%, which is from the general account and also the preserved account, to provide as equity to the purchase or the construction of the home. So currently the law is once you've actually done that, you cannot have a second bite of the cherry. This amendment actually gives them the ability to be able to go back into the FNPF funds to do the mortgage repayments. Now, Mr. Speaker, sir, if you look at the wording in the bill actually says that the banks or the financial institutions must ensure that they carry on with these arrangements and must actually use all the effort to carry on with the arrangement. In the event that that arrangement requires some form of payment, then the members can access those funds from the FNPF account. And Mr. Speaker, sir, the law also allows the Reserve Bank of Fiji, at the commencement of this act, to know exactly which accounts have these arrangements. So there's a lot of transparency that takes place, because we don't want people to say, look, actually I had this arrangement, but I have now missed out. Or I should be as part of this arrangement when they weren't part of the arrangement. So we had to completely ring fence it to ensure that everybody's rights are protected. There's nobody trying to, get a quick win through this. Before, Mr. Speaker, sir, I sit down, I also would like to address the issue where I know a lot of people had discussed the issue of hire purchase and also unsecured loans with banks. We had, Mr. Speaker, and I'm going to list of all the financiers we met. Apart from meeting the Reserve Bank of Fiji and also all the banks, we also met with Carpenters Finance, Tapu group of companies, Vinod Patel Home and Living, Courts Fiji, Vision Investments and Subrails and others that actually do hire purchase. And to our surprise, Mr. Speaker, sir, we found quite a lot of them have actually made arrangements with the people who actually bought things from them on hire purchase. Some people actually have gone back and returned their goods and say, look, we cannot do the repayments. Please take back this, the second TV that I bought for the home. So we've had discussion with them, but in order to ensure that the FNPF funds aren't abused, this does not allow people to access the FNPF funds to do the repayments for hire purchase. Nor does it allow the people who have got unsecured loans with the banks to access the FNPF funds. We have discovered from the banks that over $100 million worth of provisioning actually has been done by the banks. In other words, they believe that at least $100 million worth of loans will actually go bad. And predominantly it's in the area of unsecured loan. So they've made that provisioning. And that obviously, in time to come, we'll see how that is dealt with. So, Mr. Speaker, sir, this is specifically to homes, and the logic behind that is that we don't want people to lose the roof over their head. In a worst case scenario, it's okay to lose your TV set, or maybe even your microwave, but you should not lose your home. and that's what we are concerned about. The other aspect of this bill, Mr. Speaker, sir, is that we have brought back specifically for these accounts where we have this arrangement, in the event that these members access the FNPF funds, FNPF will have a charge over the property. As highlighted earlier on, we don't want a situation, God willing, if COVID-19 say finishes or we have a vaccine in the middle of next year or the end of next year, and then somebody may have accessed the FNPF funds to do the mortgage repayments. And they continue and they've got back their jobs, etc. In 2-3 years' time, if for whatever reason they lose their homes because they have not done their mortgage repayments under normal circumstances, if the bank is going to do a mortgagee sale, the amount of money that will be withdrawn from the FNPF must be deposited back into the FNPF account. Because we don't want people to lose their money from the FNPF account and further down the track lose their home and they've got no security. At least by having a charge over the property in the outside chance of that home being mortgagee sold, they have those funds being replenished into the FNPF account. So they got some form of security. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, sir.
I thank you. Honourable Attorney General, honourable members, the floor is now open for debate on the motion. Honourable
Thank you,
Prasad, you have the floor.
Mr. Speaker. I'm not standing to oppose the bill, but I do think, Mr. Speaker, that there are some important issues that needs to be raised, and not just for the sake of clarity, but also for the sake of understanding the consequences or the issues at hand. And I wholeheartedly agree with the Honourable Attorney General, Mr. Speaker, that nobody would like to see people losing their homes. The first point I want to make, I think the banks, I'm not sure what sort of discussion the Honourable Attorney General has been having with the banks, but I think the banks, in a way, have really no choice, because if they do go into a situation where there is mortgagee sale, apart from some of the rich guys around, and there could be plenty around looking for properties, I think the banks also know that it would not be easy to get those mortgagee sales. So I think the onus is on the banks, because the banks in some ways, Mr. Speaker, over the last several years have been liberal in terms of extending home loans, and that's good. And many young people that I know who've had employment for just over a couple of years, and perhaps less than 10 years in many cases, have acquired quite big sums of housing loans. And many of them, Mr. Speaker, are those who, there's a trend now where people build not just a standard residential 3-bedroom house, but they build double stories, they have apartments, and the expectation of many of them is that they would be able to rent out the apartments, and part of that rental income forms the amount for repayment. But many of them are also struggling because the rental market is also down, and people are struggling to get income there. But, Mr. Speaker, I'm not sure if, I hope it is not some smart idea from some smart banker, because I think in some ways, if a large number of people are actually going to use the FNPF funds to make mortgage repayments, then in some ways, FNPF would be bankrolling the banks. And I had the Honourable Attorney General say that the banks provisioning about 100 million, with foreshadowing bad loans, and those mainly related to unsecured loans. I think the bank should also do some provisioning. I think it's the responsibility of the banks to do that, to ensure, especially for those who have home loans and mortgages to pay, because these and that provisioning could also allow banks to give repayment holiday for a longer period of time. We may see the situation change mid next year or by the end of next year. The banks can, in my view, look at holiday giving repayment holidays not only on principal but also on interest. Because, Mr. Speaker, I'll just give you an example. I mean, if this is a real example, if somebody has $36,000 in the FNPF, the preserved balance of $28,000 and a general balance of $8,000, and as per the bill, it says that the maximum of 50% from the preserved entitlement and a maximum of 100% from the general entitlement. And if you work that out, this person will have about $22,000 out of the $36,000 in the account to use to make the repayment. And if the repayment is about $3,500 in this particular case, this is a real example I'm giving of a situation, that would last, that $22,000, Mr. Speaker, would last for only 6 months. So it is, in some ways, going to basically take away almost 60% of that member's account. And already they have lost 5%. And I think that would continue for another year. So what we are saying, Mr. Speaker, is FNPF has been the institution. A lot of the help that people have got for themselves, Mr. Speaker, is from FNPF. And this is an additional help that they're going to those who are having mortgage difficulties, are going to use the FNPF. So I think, Mr. Speaker, it's very important for the banks, and my message to the banks is the bank should not, at this point in time, use this opportunity to get members' funds into the banks. In fact, the bank should ensure that they provide enough timeline, and I think they can, so that the members don't have to go and get the funds out of the FNPF. It is also going to have some impact, Mr. Speaker, in terms of the retirement, the future for these people. I mean, yes, we don't want them to lose their homes, but we also want them to have some retirement funds left. And the only safeguard in the bill, as the Attorney General pointed out, is that if they are going to lose their house anyway, or lose their homes anyway, in that circumstances, they will be able to get the funds back into their account. So I think, Mr. Speaker, the banks should look at it. And also, Mr. Speaker, if you look at the restrictions, I think the FNPF itself, the decisions on which, the reasons on which they're going to make the decisions to actually approve the applications is also going to be quite restrictive and quite difficult for members to take. Finally, Mr. Speaker, I was going to respond to the political stunt pulled by the Prime Minister this morning, but I'll leave it for another day. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you. Honourable Boka, you have the floor.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker. I support the concern expressed by my colleague Dr. Biman Prasad that perhaps the banks need to do more for those whose loans are in distress. And listening to Dr. Biman, I'm beginning to see that there's a brilliant banker here who knows that the provision for doubtful debts is about $100 million or more, and that they can tap into FNPF to save them, to make up for what they are bound to lose with the mortgagee, the lending for homes. I think if you look around Suva and around Fiji today, there are a lot of houses on rents, house for sale, indicating that there's distress across the land. And here we are, just about everyone in Fiji will be a member of FNPF, and anyone who's in distress, the bank virtually has a guarantee that the FNPF fund will be available to make up for the bank's expected losses. So, which is fine. I mean, that is commerce, Honourable Speaker. But what I'd like to see, Honourable Speaker, is more dialogue on what else they can do. We know, Honourable Speaker, it has been raised many times in this House that interest rates are stubbornly high in this country. The overnight lending rate is an all-time low. Liquidity is high. Yet, if you borrow, if you're a borrower, and we are a borrower, our corporation, the interest rate is very, very high. We've tried many times to bring it down, and they say that it's a way they can cushion the risk during difficult times. But if these are extraordinary times, there is a source of funding in there to help the banks. They should make an effort to bring down interest rates. I would just urge that, and I know it's a commercial consideration for the banks, but I think the dialogue in this country should be driven towards that. If they have something here to salvage their loans, they should come to the party in a bigger way, and one is the interest rate. Thank you, Honourable Speaker.
Thank the Honourable Walker. Honourable Nikonowai Kula, you have the floor.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker. I would like to raise a few points or two of concern on the shape and form of the bill as it is, bearing in mind that this bill has come through Standing Order 51, in which we are not permitted the public to make its comments. Talking about Order 51, Honourable Speaker, we have many bills coming in. But that is a sign of laziness on the part of government. That is a sign of complacency. It is a sign that some of their ministers are not being responsible, are doing other things than their primary role as legislators. If I take the example of the Environmental Management Bill and also the Depleting Substance Bill, which is the responsibility of the Minister for Environment. You know, this tells the House that this minister has been doing other things than concentrating on the environment. And sure enough, if we read our papers, we'll see the Honourable Minister in Kayasi today, tomorrow he's in Lautoka, the next day he's in everywhere else. And No, he should be in the office.
Order.
And he's going to do things that are assigned to the field officers. And not only him with his entourage. He is like a small prime minister to me. A small prime minister with his small entourage, prime minister with his big entourage. And, well, and if you look at this, polystyrene. Why did all these come out together? Plastic, polyester, plastic cup, everything. Because he was not doing his job. And this one, ozone depleting zone, it's here because, it's out of time. We have a time limited by 1st January because he's doing other things as opposed to concentrating on environment. Now, on the bill, Honorable Speaker, the first point that I wish to make on this bill is that it is very narrow. Why is it only assisting homeowners? What about those who have bills of sales? What about those who have on hire purchase? All of them are equally affected by the COVID-19. And the next point is that this is only allowing them to take their own money. That's their own money from FNPF. Why doesn't the money give them that? And I tell you, Honorable Speaker, the better solution would have been if, by law, we freeze all payments from the bank and the government to deal only with the bank, instead of letting homeowners or debtors go to the FNPF. Well, if you have the money, where's the 2.5 billion? 5 billion, and now our national debt has gone up to 9 billion. Why don't you use that? Why don't you use government money to take care of these people? Now, going on to the contents of the bill, Honorable Speaker, see, I wish to raise, I'm concerned at Section 3. Section 3, it says, a mortgagor who, at the commencement of this act, has an existing arrangement with a mortgagee. Those ones will be protected. But the effect of COVID will not end when this act comes into place. If this act comes into effect today, what about tomorrow? Tomorrow, someone will be affected, but those people will not be qualified. So if this was in a standing committee, I will tell the drafters, you relook at that. Relook at that, because this is very limiting. The other point that I wish to add is in relation to paragraph section 4, which says, after the mortgagee has made every possible effort and exhausted every available avenue, then only they will provide relief. I will also tell the drafters, relook at that. It's too open. You must give a definition of what you mean by exhausted every avenue and provided relief, because otherwise it will be abused by the bankers, because the bankers know that money is coming from FNPF. So those will be 2 points that I will be raising to the drafters. But unfortunately, they are not here, and we're trying to resolve all these here, which means that some of the things that I say can be correct, but we'll have to possibly wait for another Standing Order 51 to come and correct it. For example, in the last time, when I said it is very, very dangerous for FIRCA to be issuing garnishee, it will be open to abuse. If legislations like this were in the standing committee, I will tell the drafters, you relook at that, because that is totally dangerous. It's open to abuse. You should limit that only to where there are debtors. Allow them to go to the court. So as it is, I see this needs a lot of relook at, and those are the concerns that I wish to raise. Another point on the Ministry of Environment. That's all.
Thank you. Honourable Bulutab, you have the floor.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker. So I stand to support the bill, given that this is a